That jury should have given me a medal for shooting one of them instead of...
Who can forget those classic TV westerns that we all have grown to love throughout the years? Bonanza, Gunsmoke, The Big Valley, The Virginian, and the list goes on and on. During the 50s and 60s, cowboys dominated the airwaves. Tales of heroic frontier adventures were the very thing that captivated TV audiences during this time.
Don't let it scare you, son, just like it was earlier tonight, 2 against 1.
And of course, all of the major networks took part in these weekly storytellings. In 1958, Revue Studios was seeking actors for their new programming. Young Robert Fuller had been making a name for himself doing small roles for the company.
I seen him at the trial. I wanted to kill him then and there, but Virgil and Boone said to wait. Well, I ain't waiting no longer.
This is Virgil's quarrel.
He's a lawman, Ma!
Go on. Get on your horse and count yourself lucky.
I haven't seen the inside of that cabin.
And you ain't going to.
Go on! Get out!
Gonna search that cabin, Mr. Carey.
Try it.
While filming an episode of the short-lived show, Cimarron City, Fuller was summoned to the office of Patrick Kelly, Revue Studios' vice president of talent. Fuller recalls that the meeting didn't go as planned.
I went up to his office, and the secretary ushered me into his office. And he said, "We've been watching you at the studio, and we're interested in having you do a series for us." I couldn't believe it, you know. I said, "My God, really?" You know. He said, "Yeah." He said, "We have a series called Markham, and it's starring Ray Milland, and there's a part in it for a young detective, and we'd like you to do it." I said, "Sir, I really don't want to play a detective. I'm looking to do a Western." He says, "Did you hear what I just said? I'm offering you a co-starring role with Ray Milland in a television series." And I said, "Yes, sir, I understand that, but I don't want to play a detective. I want to be a cowboy." He said, "I don't know what to tell you." He said, "Go on, just get out of here."
Kelly was naturally dumbfounded that his offer was refused but accepted Fuller's decision. A couple of weeks later, Robert Fuller would find himself in Kelly's office once again. And once again, the meeting would not go as planned.
Anyway, about another week later or so, my agent called me and said, "Patrick Kelly wants to see you again." I thought, "Oh, well, this could be, you know." So I went up to his office and I walked in and he said, "Hello, star." I said, "Not quite, sir." Not quite, but what can I do for you? And he threw a script across the table. He said, "Take this out in the office and read it and then tell me what you think about it." And I said, "Okay." And I picked it up and I walked outside, and it was a half-hour version of a series called Laramie. And I read it and fell in love with it. I just said, "My God, this is the best Western I've ever read. The part of Jess Harper is unbelievable. You know, this is what I've been waiting for all my life." So I walked back in and I said exactly those things to him. And he said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, "We're not talking about you for the part of Jess Harper. We're talking about you for the part of Slim. Jess Harper is already cast. John Smith has it, and he's under contract to us at the studio." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, then I can't do this series." And he said, "What?" I said, "Are you really a star already?" And I said, "No, sir." I said, "Slim, I'm not right for Slim. I am Jess. That's the part I'm ready for." And he said, "But I'm telling you, you can't get it. It's already been cast. John Smith has the part." And I said, "Well, I'm very sorry, sir. I can't do your series. Get out of here." I turned around and I left.
John Smith had burst onto the scene in the mid-1950s, appearing in feature films with some of Hollywood's biggest heavyweights.
I started with John Wayne in High and the Mighty. That was my first movie. And then I went from there, and I was very fortunate to work with Gary Cooper in Friendly Persuasion. I did 28 features before I got into TV.
In 1958, Smith would co-star with George Montgomery on the Western series, Cimarron City, which also featured Dan Blocker in the cast. There would also be an appearance by future co-star, Robert Fuller.
I want to see Matt Rockford.
Why? Want to try again?
You just tell him I'm here. I'll wait till he comes, or I'll go where he is.
You're not going anyplace except to jail, Cole.
Sheriff, I got no quarrel with you. This is between me and Rockford.
Put your gun on the table.
Now will you go tell him?
Although casting director Patrick Kelly had already picked John Smith to play the role of Jess Harper. That casting decision had caused Robert Fuller to decline the series twice. However, after their second meeting, Kelly would eventually give Robert Fuller a chance to prove that he was the right pick for the role of Jess.
I went home. About 5 o'clock that afternoon, my agent called and said, they want you to be at the studio at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning to test for the part of Jess in a new series called Laramie. And I went in the next morning. I did the test, went home that afternoon. The next morning they called and said, you got the part of Jess Harper. Vinny wasn't real happy with it in the beginning, but by the time we did the first hour show, he realized that the casting was right, that he was right for Slim and I was right for Jess.
I understand you're looking for Fred Powers.
That's right.
What do you want with him?
Business.
What kind of business?
With Robert Fuller and John Smith on board, the rest of the cast would be set in place. The part of Andy Sherman would go to Robert L. Crawford Jr., a child actor who had recently been making a name for himself on a series called Playhouse 90.
It was through getting the lead there in the Playhouse 90, which was a live television show in 1959, and I played a young boy that ended up in the concentration camps. His father was a fascist, his mother a communist. Michael Del Castillo wrote the book of his life, A Child of Our Time. And Robert Pyrosh had seen Child of Our Time and said, we'd like you to do this. And we did a screen test, Bob Fuller and I, and Fuller had said to Pat Kelly, who later became vice president of our small production company, who was head of casting it, said, I can't play Slim, I'm not Slim. So he was playing Jess. And of course, I'm brown-haired and John is a blonde Adonis. But they bleached what little hair because I had shaved my head. And it grew out over that first season.
You don't want me to have to sell that breeding stock, do you?
Gosh, no, Slim, that'd be awful.
All right, let's settle down and run this place so we've got a fighting chance.
I'll work hard, honest I will. And I'll work especially hard today.
That's the idea.
Because I gotta quit early.
To finish out the cast, Laramie creators turned to singer-songwriter Hoagie Carmichael.
Can't be. Nobody could have fixed that ever.
Well, the blacksmith in Laramie used to sell him before he came west.
Oh, he's a genius.
Slim said a long time ago you ought to have a piano, Jonesy.
Sure.
I guess you can figure it's from the four of us.
Four?
Well, us three and Miss Essie.
Oh, good for her.
Go on, play something, Jonesy. Good to have you home, Jess.
Marry me way out in Laramie where the wild sycamores grow. We'll raise us a young'un to tend to my tack and a girl to help you sew. Say that you love me some night.
Carmichael already had a string of hits under his belt before he would begin composing songs for a division of Warner Brothers in 1935. This decision would connect Carmichael with Hollywood and filmmaking. He would go on to have multiple film roles before becoming part of the family at the Sherman Ranch. Now that casting was over, filming would begin at Universal. However, not all scenes would be shot at the studio.
Universal Studios was 850 acres, and we had a huge back lot. So we worked out there quite a bit. That's where the ranch was. But then we shot at Thousand Oaks, all places around California where we could, and we went on location to Utah quite often. We'd shoot 2 or 3 shows there and a lot of stock footage.
We were talking about Kanab, Utah, and, people think, well, they put sweat on them and, and all that, what do they call it, the glycerin, Yeah, it's real sweat. I mean,
Although filming conditions could sometimes be exhausting, the cast would still make memories and have fun while on set.
We had a great time. My God, let's see, I was 26 years old when I started Laramie. And of course we had fun. My God, we were kids, we were starring in shows, but we were good. We did our job, we knew our dialogue, we were one-take, two-take actors without a doubt. That's why we could have so much fun.
Everybody you got to work with in Hollywood was experienced. I remember the cameraman had been on the movie Hawaii. There was a depth of knowledge across the board that it made it like going to summer camp somehow with a bunch of experts who were so confident about what they did. I remember working with Ernie Borgnine, and we're being attacked by Indians, and we're under the table, and Borgnine's looking up at me and said, "This is a lot of fun, isn't it?" But to finally be on a set with the Wranglers every day was just unbelievable.
The hard work of the cast and crew would eventually pay off when the premiere episode of Laramie aired on the NBC network on September 15, 1959. The first episode introduces us to Slim Sherman, the owner of the Sherman Ranch and stage stop. Along with Slim is his younger brother Andy and right-hand man Jonesy. Hot-headed drifter Jess Harper makes his first appearance in the premiere.
All right, deal me in. We'll play a hand or two and see how it works out.
Yeah, but don't deal anything off the bottom.
The show would go on to become widely popular. It would also attract a host of wonderful guest stars, including Ben Johnson, Rod Cameron, Alan Hale Jr., Roberta Shore, Claude Akins, Eddie Albert, Dennis Patrick, L.Q. Jones, Jim Davis, Susan Oliver, Russell Johnson, Adam West, Bing Russell, Leonard Nimoy, James Best, Ernest Borgnine, Dawn Wells, Denver Pyle, Charles Bronson, James Colburn, Ben Cooper, John McIntyre, Arthur Honeycutt, and more. Fans loved the series, but casting changes would happen after the first season when Hoagy Carmichael decided not to renew his contract. According to internet sources, Carmichael said that he would rather be playing golf than to keep up with the demands of a weekly series. Other changes would also take place in the cast, including the departure of Robert L. Crawford Jr., who, unlike Carmichael, never had the option to stay on the show. Crawford once told in an interview that he had been informed that the writers had written him off the show. The exact reasons why are unknown, but he did briefly appear in the first part of the second season.
I did 1 year, and they used 3 or 4 episodes into the second year, as I recall.
The writers would explain the absence by telling that Jonesy had accompanied Andy to boarding school in St. Louis.
Man, I've never seen such luck.
Well, that was kind of close. This guy must mean business.
Yeah, well, so do we.
With Carmichael and Crawford gone from the cast, the second season would present more of a Western duo, with John Smith and Robert Fuller leading the series as usual.
Hey, look, I got no time for games, but if you want to play one, I'll be glad to oblige you. You're getting just like an old lady, you know that? Now, I don't generally hit old ladies, but Go on, get out of here. What's the matter? Didn't you feed him?
No, I didn't feed him. Who do you think's been bringing in the wash and milking the cows and splitting the kindling?
Did poor little Jess Harper do them chores all by his little self?
The opening sequence would also go through some changes. One of which shows the Laramie artwork with titles superimposed over it, while another opening would resemble the original without the characters of Andy and Jonesy. To restore the family chemistry of the original cast, Laramie creators would call upon veteran actress Spring Byington to take on the role of matronly widow, Daisy Cooper. Byington had won an Academy Award in 1938 and was already well known for feature films as well as her role on the television series, December Bride.
Hey, all the way from Kansas City. Well, isn't that nice? And you, ladies? Are you girls?
Yes.
Fan club members, yes?
Yes, we are charter members.
Oh, there are.
Since 1925.
I wasn't making pictures in 1925.
We always had faith in you.
Another character added to the series would be orphan Mike Williams, played by child actor Dennis Holmes.
They did it! They killed my mom and pa! They killed him!
I was under contract to 20th Century Fox at the time. I went to work every day at Fox downtown. The movies I did there were amazingly fun to do, and I got to do pretty much anything I wanted in the prop department or on one of the empty stages. All of a sudden, I heard that Review at the time had bought my contract from 20th Century Fox. And I pretty much just went from going every day to work at one studio to going to work every day at another studio. And I picked right up with Laramie, and boy, that was the best time of my life, those 2 years. We were all thankful to be there, and we were happy to be there. We all worked together well. There was no one that was a prima donna. There was no one that showed up and didn't know their lines or didn't know what the scenes were. It was just a happy unit that worked together well.
Color TV had been on the horizon throughout the 1950s. Very few TV shows were filmed in color due to the new technology's expense. There were an estimated 350,000 color sets in the United States, the bulk of which were manufactured by RCA. However, that number had jumped to 500,000 by early 1960. Still, the only network actively pushing color programming was NBC with its full-color series, Bonanza, which also premiered in September 1959 along with Laramie. As mentioned earlier, the premiere episode of Laramie was filmed in color. But for one reason or the other, the show continued to be filmed in black and white until its third season, along with 2 new cast members. Laramie made the transition to full color at the beginning of season 3 in 1961.
Boy, you really know how to start a morning off, Miss Daisy.
Well, thank you. I certainly enjoy cooking for the good appetites around here.
Milk?
I beg your pardon, Mike?
May I please have some more milk, Miss Daisy?
With the addition of Byington and Holmes, a family element was restored to the series, even though the show never lost its rough edge.
What's this? It's a gun. I'm sure you've seen one before.
According to Robert Fuller, they were asked to smooth out some of those so-called rough edges.
The PTA in 1960 went and told Teddy Kennedy that we don't like the idea that there are guns and this and that and too much violence and Westerners. Teddy Kennedy went to the FCC and made the FCC stop us from doing all kinds of stuff.
I'll tell you to get off my property. Just once.
If you all remember the early Olympics, if I didn't beat up 5 guys and kill 6, in the first season it wasn't a show. Second season, I could only have 1 fight and wound 1 person. Every time our scripts came down, they would come red, white, blue, green, and every piece of action was cut out.
Although the series was feeling the heat of FCC censorship, Laramie continued to be an action-packed Western. And along with all of that action would come dangerous stunts that were performed by the actors themselves.
You know, like fight scenes, I used to do most of my own fights, and I got clobbered a few times, you know.
I did them all. Probably 99%. I think I've been doubled twice in all the years I've done anything.
So I had some action scenes, and I did my own stunts in Laramie pretty much for what that was worth. I did a scene where I was, drugged across the corral by a horse, stuff like that. But, nothing really too dangerous ever. And they would have never let me do anything dangerous. Safety was always the primary concern when it came to me. Now, those guys, yeah, they were willing to take some chances. But personally, they would never let me get anywhere near harm. Everything was done with proper camera angles and just...
I was doing a fight scene with another stuntman, and it was Hal Needham. You've heard of Hal Needham. I always used Hal. Whenever I was going to fight with anybody, another actor, I would have Hal double that guy because he and I could fight pretty good together. I trusted him a lot. And the scene... He throws a spear at me, and I parry it, and he picks me up and throws me over his shoulder, and I go on my back on a breakaway table and 4 breakaway chairs. So anyway, we did the first take late in the evening. Morgan Woodward was on the set and the show too. He flips me up, and I go over on my back, and I only break half the table and 2 chairs. And being a dumb macho guy, I said, I don't like that. I wanted to go in the middle. I wanted to break everything and make it look more. I said, can we do it again? And the assistant director said, we got about 15 minutes before overtime and we wrap. If you can set it up and do it, go. So I told her, I said, let's go. Set this thing up so we can shoot it again real quick. I didn't look. I didn't do anything. Here, we do the fight scene. I go up in the air. I break 3 balsa wood chairs and hit my leg on a real one. They put a real chair in, and I didn't go around and check it. And Morgan Woodward said it sounded like a gunshot when my leg broke. And I knew my leg was broke before I hit the ground. And I immediately called my stand-in, and I said, get your pocket knife and cut this boot off right now.
Slim Sherman and Jess Harper were no doubt 2 of America's favorite cowboys. But what good is any cowboy without a great horse?
When we were doing all those westerns, we had 400, 600 horses that you could ride, shoot off of, that knew a camera, stood still, did whatever you wanted to do with them.
You know, there's nothing colder than leather saddle.
That's
and
right.
It's been, and it's been cold outside, and I'll tell you, when we did Laramie, I used to have my Wrangler sit on it for about half an hour before I'd mount. That was cheating, wasn't it?
I'd been on horses. My sisters loved horses. There was a stable near where I grew up, so I'd been around them. But really, Richard Brim, the Wrangler on Laramie, took me under his wing a little bit and taught me the ins and outs of riding in movies, which is a little different than just riding around the stable or riding around the hills.
Oh, that's okay, Aunt Daisy. I'm not worried. I figure by the time I'm grown up, I'll have to stay around here to take care of Slim and Jess in their old age.
Are we gonna take that part?
Well, I don't know. You reckon we can both handle him? Get him, Slim.
Having worked on westerns before, Smith and Fuller were experienced when it came to horses. However, as Robert Fuller recalls, not all of the actors had this expertise.
32 westerns going at prime time, so everybody was going to work on a western. But when you walked into the casting director's office or the producer, he would say, can you ride a horse? And the actor would say, well, not really. Next. Bruce Dern tells the story that he couldn't spell horse. The producer said, "Can you ride?" He said, "Like the wind." Got the part. Laramie fell off the horse 6 times the first day. So did Warren Oates. I mean, it was a wreck. You couldn't believe it, some of these guys. But they did so many westerns that they learned how to ride.
Mike still scouting for that stage?
Yes, and I'm afraid he'll break his neck doing it.
Many times throughout the series, we can see a wonderful shot of the stagecoach as it arrives at the Sherman Ranch. One particular day while cast and crew would recreate this scene as they had done many times before, things would go terribly wrong. Robert Fuller recalls the incident as a reminder of the risk these professionals take for the entertainment world.
We probably did it 100 times. Strange part of the story is that this particular day, John Smith Standing got hired that day to ride shotgun. He was going to get a couple extra bucks to ride shotgun on the stagecoach. And John Smith and myself were at the stage stop waiting for the stage to come down the hill and stop, and we were going to walk out. So we're standing there, and the camera's on a big boom. And we stood there, and all of a sudden the director yelled action, and this stagecoach started to come down the hill. It got about 15 feet, and you saw it was going to be a runaway.
A runaway horse is a terrifying situation. The horse takes control, leaving the rider or riders in great danger. Even with the professional experience of Western actor Fox O'Callaghan, nothing could be done to stop the team of horses from breaking loose from the stagecoach and going their own way.
And I mean, you ain't gonna stop 4 horses on a stagecoach on a runaway. And they took off down that hill. Foxy couldn't hold him. He bailed out. John Standing was an older man that didn't know what to do. He tried to ride it out. They got down to the curve. The stagecoach turned over, rolled up against a big rock wall, broke the traces. 4 horses came at us, and John Smith's car and 2 other cars were parked down the road. These horses came through, ran over both of those cars, ran down the main street, and didn't stop till they got to the main gate. And I ran up to the stagecoach, and Smitty and I did, and they didn't, but it's just a bunch of smoking up there. Poor Bert was his name, was sitting there, and his leg was totally cut off. He was a mess, and he just sat there, and then they took him right to the hospital, and they had to take his leg off.
Laramie would go on to run a total of 4 seasons and leave the entertainment world with 124 classic TV episodes, before its cancellation in 1963.
Comedies came into town, and we had an hour, and NBC wanted to take that hour away and put 2 half-hour comedies in there, which they did, and the 2 half-hour comedies didn't even last a half a season. They made a big mistake there. Laramie could probably have gone another maybe 2 seasons or something like that. But in my case, I was very lucky. The second it ended, they said, "Would you mind going into Wagon Train, playing Cooper Smith, and they'll create a new role for me." Well, of course, John McIntyre, who was a dear friend and a great actor, and I knew Frankie and Terry and all those guys anyway, I jumped at the chance.
By the 1980s, more than 50% of households in the United States would have cable television where they would get to see classic TV reruns. Sadly, Laramie would not get wide syndication with sister programs like Bonanza, The Rifleman, and others. During the 1980s, Pat Robertson leased syndication rights to 170 classic Bonanza episodes that had not been in syndication for years. Robertson would tag these shows as the lost episodes. For years the entire series of Laramie had been lost as well, seeing how it never received wide syndication and was never remastered, therefore it may have slipped through the cracks of classic TV lovers. However, all of that has changed now, with remastered versions now playing on multiple channels and streaming outlets plus DVD releases.
That's 50 years ago. And here they are, people today still enjoying that show and thinking about it and still remember me from something that long ago. It's frightening when you think about it. It really is. But I'm thrilled.